All right, I think we're going to get started. So, hello everyone. I'm Camille Kirk, Getty's Head of Sustainability. Thank you so much for coming today, and welcome to our Earth Day celebration, really it's Earth Month, with artist Aroussiak Gabrielian. Before I offer an introduction, I'm just going to give a gentle reminder to please silence your mobile devices. And also please note that this event is being recorded. The video will be posted on Getty Research Institute's YouTube channel, as one does these days. I appreciate starting events like this, such as this, with a land acknowledgement, which you see up here, not as a performative exercise, but as an opportunity to center our coming together in the recognition of our human capacity to listen and learn from our shared humanity, and to restore and repair. Most all of us in this room are immigrants to this beautiful place, and we can all be thankful to be here and to have the privilege and opportunity to care for our cultural heritage, this land, our planet, and each other. Today's event is born of a new collaborative partnership between Getty's Sustainability Office and the Getty Research Institute to celebrate the 55th anniversary of Earth Day, which has really been Earth Month here at Getty. It takes teamwork to offer a program like this, so I want to thank everyone involved in bringing this event to you today. Visby Gensler, Janani Subramanian, and William Ramirez from the GRI, the Getty Research Institute's Public Programming Group, David Rue in events, the whole audiovisual support team, thank you so much, and our catering group, who is preparing a creative and celebratory, delicious, I think, reception for us immediately afterward in the lobby. I invite you to join us and to continue the conversation that we're going to be having here today. Today's program is not only an opportunity to celebrate Earth Month, but also developed out of the GRI's annual Scholars Program theme, which this year is dedicated to extinction. In this moment of extreme environmental decay and monumental loss, our scholars and residents have been conducting research on this pressing topic and its bearing on the visual arts and cultural heritage. The topic addresses the ever-present specter of species-level extinction and resource exhaustion, while also seeking to explore the creative and productive possibilities that extinction may enable. Our speaker today is an artist who does just that. Aroussiak Gabrielian is an environmental designer, a bioartist, and futurist who reimagines human and non-human entanglements through landscape, media, and speculative design. A USC professor and landscape futures lab director, she is founder of Foreground Design Agency, an award-winning, globally exhibited practice expanding climate imaginaries and reshaping how we envision ecological futures. In today's talk, Aroussiak will share some of her work and end with a focus on Near-Extinction Rituals, her forthcoming book, which features prototypes that catalyze new rituals that force humans out of their exploitative relationship with the more than human world and obligate humans to collaborate and thus evolve toward more ethical models for living. When Visby, Janani, and I began planning this event, we knew we wanted to offer a variety of ways for our visitors to engage with the concepts presented today. So we included a garden tour, and of course, the signature piece by Aroussiak, Resonant Exchange, where we would have experienced a meditation with one of the trees here at Getty Center before her talk. However, nature chose to remind us this morning that we are part of forces still larger than our human control. It rained. Hard enough to disrupt the installation plans. So we will now hold this signature experience on May 24th, and we invite you to return for it, and another fun day at Getty. With a theme like extinction, we also wanted to offer optimism and a sense of agency. I believe that we are beings of free will. Free will is both a burden of choice and also a relief, a grace bestowed upon us to take action and engage with our future. By choosing to be pragmatic optimists, we understand that we should do what we can to make the world a better place, even if sometimes our efforts seem small and inconsequential in an imperfect world. Caring enough to take action starts with understanding and being curious. We all seek to understand and to be understood, and we are curious. Artists and scientists tend to channel their curiosity in specific ways, and it is through their specific lenses that we all come to learn more about our world. Artists and scientists both closely observe. Both use their close observation to strip away unnecessary detail, to focus and better understand the subject of their curiosity. Artists interpret the human condition and our environment to show us new visions and perspectives, inviting us to stretch our curiosity and imagination. Scientists interpret the world through theorizing and experimentation, and they also invite us into new understandings. And I would submit that artists and scientists are simultaneously doing the same thing, imagining and experimenting. In our preparatory conversation, Aroussiak explained to me how she brings both science and art into conversation in her work. Her work is deeply informed by scientific thinking and practice, as well as philosophical theory and approaches, and ancestral knowledge, deep, long-lasting, embodied knowledge. She closely observes nature and humans in her work and challenges us to think again about the age-old questions of, are humans part of nature? Are we separate from nature? Or can both things be true at the same time? As April, Earth Month, draws to a close, I hope you too will spend some time closely observing nature, perhaps during the City Nature Challenge that just started yesterday and runs through Monday. And I hope you will muse on our connections with nature and find ways to take caring actions. Now, without further ado, please welcome our speaker today, Aroussiak Gabrielian.
Good afternoon, everyone. Make sure the slides are working here. Thank you all so much for being here despite the morning rain. And what an incredible privilege to be on this stage. I really want to briefly thank Thisbe Gensler for inviting me to be a part of this Earth Day activation experience, and for Camille Kirk for the generous introduction and the earlier conversation. I'm very much looking forward to the discussion afterward. Is it plugged in? Because my computer dies if it's not. It's a day of mishaps. Thanks for your patience. I think we got it. I think so. I shouldn't speak too soon. I spoke too soon. Oh, here we go. Ay. Is Mercury in retrograde? Does anyone know?
Apparently.
Sorry, everything got rebooted. My God. Okay. Thank you. Got it. Thanks so much. Okay, let's try this again. How's everyone doing? Thanks for your patience. Again, grateful to be here, and thank you again for the introduction and the invitation to take part. So I actually wanted to open today's talk briefly by situating the experience that was curated for this afternoon, which hopefully you'll come back to see Memorial Day weekend, called Resonant Exchange, Meditation with a Tree. The piece speaks to the larger aims of my creative practice and research, so I'd like to take a moment to share the aims of the meditation, hopefully to entice you to come back and experience it in a few weeks. Resonant Exchange was designed to invite an intimate encounter with a tree as a living, sensing being. One of my key intentions was to counter what is known as plant blindness, the cognitive bias and human tendency to perceive plants merely as backdrop or as environmental noise, rather than entities with agency, intelligence, and presence. Through guided meditations, participants are encouraged to engage the tree through multiple modalities: breath, touch, intuition, and attention. An excerpt. Clicker's not working. Slides are not advancing. Sorry, everyone. It's not doing it here either. I wonder if this is going to be how it's going to go all night. I hope not. Okay. I wanted to read an excerpt from the meditation. This is very few lines from a 20-minute meditation, just so you have a sense of the ways in which this sensate contact is attempted to be established in the meditation. Your body, as that of the tree, is made of the same matter as star, as soil, as river. Every drop of moisture, mineral, microbe is recycled between you and all living beings on this earth, both familiar and foreign. What would it take to really know this tree, to really know it, to learn its name, to hear its story, to feel its rhythms, to eat its fruit, to live in its skin, to know how it feels for it to heal its scars? And the meditation unfolds by bringing us into each of these components, learning its name, hearing its story, engaging in touch, and so forth. So I hope you come to experience it. The piece tries to move the participant through these questions and across scientific, historic, cultural, spiritual, and poetic systems to immerse us within the multi-layered and multi-scalar facets of this tree. This extends Robin Wall Kimmerer's invitation in her piece, Speaking of Nature, to reconsider the pronouns we use for trees and plants, to move away from it and towards a language that acknowledges their vitality. As part of the experience, participants will receive a postcard, both as a score for the meditation in the spirit of the Fluxus movement, and an invitation afterward to name the tree and record what it gave them, a sensation, an emotion, an insight. The hope is that next time, upon returning to the garden, participants would not just pass by the tree, but will greet it, recognizing it as something known, as kin. As Camille mentioned, I'm an environmental designer and bioartist with training in architecture, landscape architecture, and media arts. My creative practice imagines what future forms of collaboration and coexistence might look like across systems beyond the human. Through a feminist new materialist lens and deploying arts-based research, I investigate the entanglements of human and non-human life, as well as our approach to planetary threats, challenging typical techno-scientific solutions to environmental crises and reimagining more ethical ways forward. My work, as executed through creative practice, written scholarship, my research lab, and teaching, all aim to torque our imaginaries, to help us rethink our interactions with both human and non-human agents on this planet. In my arts-based practice, I work with living systems, biological organisms, and atmospheric phenomena to explore multi-species entanglements across scales. My work utilizes such biomedia as means of critically problematizing human exceptionalism. In other words, I interrogate how humans' relationship with the more than human world might be transformed by working collaboratively with living organisms to create new relational possibilities for the future. The agency of biomedia and landscape matter more generally requires new methods of study or alternative modes of research and practice. I therefore study, use, and produce knowledge with and through expanded media, including living media, to probe this new ontological and political conjecture in my work. For the past few years, I have designed and developed a variety of projects incorporating biomedia into speculative proposals for how we might live in stronger and mutually beneficial interdependence with the rest of the biophysical world. For the purposes of time, I'll share only a few today. Botanic Attunement was a project commissioned first in 2021 by Oxy Arts under the title of Biologics at the time for an exhibit titled Encoding Futures, Critical Imaginaries for AI, curated by Mashinka Firuns Hakopian and Melia Yesayan, which later traveled to the Ford Foundation Gallery in New York City. The show focused on the encoded biases of AI systems and the ways they magnify existing structural inequalities, and it invited a vast range of artists, researchers, and creators to imagine what feminist AI, what Black AI, indigenous AI, queer and trans AI might look like. I was invited to integrate questions around ecology into the show, and I wanted to critique the sources of knowledge that current AI platforms are built on, which are the same knowledge systems that have coded and shaped the Western perspective on the rest of the biophysical world. So in this context, Botanic Attunement seeded alternative knowledge systems within the pages of books related to Western philosophy, science, and systems of thinking derived from the European Enlightenment to attune the visitor instead to the collective intelligence of plant matter. The books were seeded with symbiotic species of plants which grew directly from the pages hydroponically. What can plant intelligence teach us about more interconnected and relational ways of being? Can we counter the reductiveness of Western science and its contribution to plant blindness, particularly the inability to see the agency of plants as intelligent, living, and sociable beings? These were some of the questions I wanted to pose with this work, echoed also in the meditation piece that I opened with. While Western anthropocenic perspectives treat nature as other, to be extracted and exploited, botanic attunement invited interaction through the delivery of nutrient feed, offering visitors a means to participate in collective expressions of care shared within interdependent webs of life. This piece was living and continued to grow and shift over the duration of the exhibit as visitors fed and nourished the plants on display. Through this piece, I was also interested in asking how AI systems might be built differently and how they might function if they centered and were modeled not on human intelligence, but rather on plant intelligence instead. In this next project, Jibijana, another form of intelligence is foregrounded, that of water. Constructed for a string quartet performance at the American Academy in Rome, the project brings the animate quality of water as landscape matter to life through light and projection. Using high-intensity light, the water's liquid life is made manifest through its reflection and through the movement of bodies of performers. Here, I was interested in the interplay between two systems, the muscular act of music making, the way in which each of these instruments forces the body to respond in very specific anatomic ways, and the muscle memory involved in that, and water as an archive, or what is often called water memory, suggesting that water notes or registers the external influences that have acted upon it. With each body asserting its own force through the muscular act of music making and leaving an ever-shifting imprint on the water's surface, the performers were equipped with this analog bracelet system in this pulley system that was designed, and as they played their instruments, this agitated the water, which was then reflected back onto the screen. And I'll play a clip here so you have a sense. In collaboration with the composer Suzanne Farren, we wanted to also connect this idea to a sound world where the sine wave purity of the vibraphone would sink into the wood and hair of earthen string bodies, where movements of the bow across all 5 players would visually display momentary synchronicities and evaporations. So in this piece, we're physically connecting the sound to water via the bodies of performers, with each body asserting its own force and leaving an ever-shifting imprint that's reflected back to the audience. The instruments that required more rigorous strumming created a different pattern that you're seeing here. The staircase acted as informal seating for the event, and this created a never-shifting kind of sound and visual scape, also meditative in its effect. So with this grounding, I'd like to transition here to the 3-part design series and forthcoming book that I've been developing since 2019 that grapples more intimately with multi-species relationality. Taking on human-induced environmental catastrophe that impacts species and landscape processes across scales, from the microscopic to the atmospheric, the work attempts to make palpable the psychically distant worlds of the microbiome and the Arctic ice sheets, bringing climate stress and adaptation into the physical and corporeal realities of our everyday lives. Interrogating the position of the human in our environmental future, the series presents 3 design prototypes that catalyze or require new rituals that force humans out of their exploitative relationship with the more than human world and obligate them to collaborate and thus co-evolve toward more inclusive and ethical models for living. Each prototype engages an element of landscape matter, focusing on the future of food production, Chapter 1 on food, the diminishing security of our global water system, Chapter 2 on water, and soil degradation and depletion, Chapter 3 on waste. The work projects a mode of environmental existence that dismantles the idea of human exceptionalism and demonstrates instead the complex webs of life upon which humans depend. It recognizes the precarity of life on our planet as human-induced climate change accelerates planetary decline and forces us to imagine how our possible and inevitable extinction might constructively contribute to life without us. Here you're seeing the table of contents. The prototypes that I'll walk you through today act as the kind of engine or the kind of core for each of the chapters, which then are fleshed out through philosophical theory, ancestral knowledge, as well as scientific inquiry. And there's, while the prototypes are standalone pieces, they are actually connected not only through the theoretical groundwork in the book, but also metabolically as well, which you'll have a sense. Here you're seeing each of the chapters and the collaborations and funding sources for each prototype. Highly collaborative, which I'll also get into. And I'm also working with a book artist to think about how to connect this metabolic structure of the projects into the way in which the book is structured and navigated as well. While this work is informed by feminist new materialism and queer theory, it's also deeply personal and rooted in lived experience. I conceived of the first prototype titled Post-Human Habitats following the birth of my daughter Zabel, a time when I was keenly aware and astounded by my body's ability to produce and deliver the exact nutrients that she required. I began to wonder how we might use our bodies to feed more than just our kin. Post-Human Habitats presents a wearable and edible landscape system powered and fertilized by human waste and doubling as an expanded ecosystem that attracts and integrates other animal and insect life. Food is the composite web of the technical, ethical, cultural, and affective. It is also the material embodiment of an increasingly complex but largely invisible assemblage of trophic encounters between different living species. And here you're seeing all the organisms that are actually a part of the food system. These are microbial life all the way scaled up to pollinators that are actually required for food to grow, that largely go unnoticed, and they're slowly disappearing due to our agricultural practices. So this is also a way to kind of safeguard their survival. Yet humans have intellectually positioned themselves outside the food chain despite being host to millions of microbial organisms that are both nourished by our interiors and exteriors and are essential to our survival. The project imagines a new set of more than human customs and practices emergent around the cultivation, preparation, and consumption of food, which is a radical break from the complex commodity chains of industrialized farming and eating. Yet rather than a nostalgic desire to return to natural economies of pre-industrial societies, the speculation responds to a new planetary landscape of depleted soils and the increasing threat of food insecurity. The project addresses a way of living and dying in the ruins of what we've created as a collaborative landscape practice of feeding each other. All my prototypes function, even if they don't have a reason to yet. It's the architect in me. So each of these produced about 40 pounds of crop, and 22 different species of crop were grown on each cloak. I also collaborated with the Rome Sustainable Food Project, who harvested one of the cloaks, and these were passed around and created finger foods that were passed around during the opening night of the exhibit. Some people took a bite directly off of my body, which was also a strange experience. The second prototype in the series, titled Transcorporal Atmospheres, is the design of water production mechanisms within human fungal networks to address issues around water access and scarcity. Yet rather than solution-driven narratives such as those derivative from hydroengineering and global water management regimes, transcorporal atmospheres instead attempts to evoke an ongoing engagement with a water world in flux. So as I've been standing here talking, you have all been inhaling my exhale. Our breath is routinely circulated and shared with others. And each breath that we put out into this world has about 4 to 6.3% water content in it, meaning that if we were to theoretically harvest our exhale, each of our bodies could produce about 1 liter of water per day. So the project creates a communal sphere of vapor, taking on the form of an undulating vessel, which encloses an inner moist environment that enables organisms, especially shiitake mushroom, to grow and be sustained by human breath. The fungus, in turn, filters this communal liquid for potable use within a growing hydro community. The shiitake is used for 2 reasons. It's a known water filter, so it filters out the impurities from this liquid breath, making it potable. And secondly, common to desert animals and plants that have adapted to low water conditions, the shiitake undergoes a process called metabolic water production, whereby as it's eating away at the strata that it grows on, it actually generates water in its body that it secretes out of its skin. Transcorporal atmospheres thus explores what it means to share our breath and the water it contains with the multi-species world. It was really important for me to build this out of glass, to use the creative agency of breath in glass blowing. So I collaborated with a glass artist, incredible glass artist, Aya Oki, and with the microbiologist that I was collaborating with, we came up with computationally came up with the formwork that would create the optimum environment for transpiration in its interior. And there's these moments of, let's see if I can use the pointer, these moments here that are innies, these that you have to bring your mouth close to and exhale into, and an inner network of tubing that's been designed to have a diameter difference between where you exhale and where it delivers the liquid to create a capillary network to pull that liquid from the breath. Here you're seeing the demo of the prototype that was shown at Solola, a project that was curated by Marcela Vieira, and the participants here got to try out this system and to look at it through various angles. The blue light that you're seeing helps the mushroom grow, is why everything is drenched in this color. And this is the output that you're seeing of that process. The output of 60 days worth of liquid breath that was communally generated through this system was also recently exhibited at Pier 17 at the South Street Seaport in New York City as part of the Creative Science Showcase for the Art and Technology Incubator of the New Museum, New Inc., for their end of the year demo festival. So here I created a scaffolding structure that has repetitive parts meant to reflect the repetitive nature of breathing, as well as the behavior that the prototype inspires. And each bottle that you're seeing is 1 day's worth of liquid breath that was produced in this collaboration. So you're seeing 60 days worth of liquid that was co-produced. And as the atmosphere exchanged on the pier, so did the look of this. And at some point, it itself started to transpire, which was quite interesting as well. The final design prototype in the Near-Extinction Rituals series, titled Future Kin, considers the material waste of death, particularly in the face of mass species extinction. Death is framed not as an endpoint, but an active material process of decay and recomposition. Future Kin imagines how the more than human bodies that will accumulate from human misdeeds will not be wasted. They will be mourned in new rituals of grief that aim to catalyze ethical thinking. The speculation engages the underground food chain and considers the types of future relationships that we might form with the soil biome, putting in place acts of care that go beyond exploitative and instrumentally regimented forms of stewardship. It considers how our bodies in death could facilitate this new form of coexistence and how design could enable and accommodate this necessary exchange. Here you're seeing the 3 phases of decomposition and the material and chemical transformations that each supports. And I'm also here working with the scientific fact that most of the microbial life in our gut is actually found in soil. And this is not just soils that we've come into contact with in our lifetimes, but it's actually passed down through the mother's side in childbirth. So it's actually ancestral soils that we carry within us. And this is a potent theme for those of us who have been expunged from our ancestral soils, as my people have, through acts of genocide. So here I'm unpacking this a bit here, but also in some future projects that are currently in progress as well. This was actually conceived of as a large-scale land art piece to be situated as a durational performance to be situated in the landscape, but I'm still figuring out or applying for funding to realize this. The piece was recently on view at the Armory, so I had to translate this to a gallery setting for the Getty's Pacific Standard Time Los Angeles exhibition at the Armory for From the Ground Up, Nurturing Diversity in Hostile Environments, which was curated by Irene Tsatsos and Eber Rodriguez. On display there was a cubic foot of soil. This is the amount a single human body would generate through the process of mortuary composting. A clay vessel alongside was designed to cocoon the dying body and its companion species in its first stage of decomposition. And then screens were embedded in the soil, cataloging gestures of care collected during a workshop held at the Armory earlier in the year, which drew on the inherently therapeutic qualities of clay as a medium to process and express collective grief, mourning, atonement, and healing through embodied and tactile engagement with shared matter. And this was done in collaboration with a choreographer and a death doula, both of whom were trying to help the participants explore new kinds of gestures with the clay. Often when one is given clay, our gestures tend to be quite utilitarian. So the prompt for the workshop here was to think of the piece of clay as a surrogate body, and the body could be a human body or a piece of land, and to offer it gestures of care and receive from it forms that felt comforting back. So the death doula and the choreographer were there to help us kind of move through that. Shaping, molding, and transforming clay in both familiar and unfamiliar rhythms, we processed the weight of the current moment, bearing witness to collective atrocities across the globe, from genocides to ecocides to fires, etc. Speakers embedded in the clay cocoon amplified the sound of decomposition as insects, microbes broke down the organic matter that was in its warm interior. All 3 prototypes prioritize the more than human species and systems that have been exploited. You're hearing some of the sound piece that was inside. Exploited or rendered mute by the inseparability of advanced capitalism and the colonial project. The book project that accompanies and builds flesh around these prototypes attempts to weave these designed prototypes with ancestral knowledge, particularly pulling from indigenous Armenian land-based rituals that I grew up with, scientific theory, and philosophical inquiry. My work does not seek to offer a prescription for repair, but it is rather about reaching out to find connection, about making common cause with the brokenness of being. I'm interested in deepening our climate and ecological imaginaries outside the confines of capitalist hegemony and colonialism, to move beyond both utopian and dystopian imaginings, and to embrace instead the plurality of ways of knowing and being in relation with others. These projects offer a method of coexistence, of both living and sharing this broken planet with others, human and otherwise. Thank you.
this on? Is it on now? Ah, okay. All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Aroussiak, for such a thought-provoking and intriguing talk. I personally have about 7 million questions, and I can't ask all of them. I am going to exercise a little bit of moderator prerogative to ask the first question, and then I'm going to turn it over to the audience, because I imagine that many of you are also intrigued and have questions. So I made so many notes, and I have, like I say, so many questions, but I guess I want to explore first something that I feel is a little bit foundational. You've referred multiple times in your talk and in your work to the more than human world. And, you know, earlier when we were conversing in our preparatory discussions, we were talking about the importance of names and what you call things and how that can really shape the way you experience or understand your world. Can you tell us a little bit about why you have chosen the term more than human as opposed to any other way of characterizing, say, natural or nature?
That's a good question. I think the more than human, for me, encompasses a lot more and is less fraught, and it also puts us in conversation a bit more because it's the human is in the word, in the term. And it's offering us to imagine life beyond us. Because the ways in which we've structured our surroundings has been so human-centric, which is part of the reason why a lot of the systems, ecological otherwise, are failing. We've devalued everything else beyond the human and prioritized only one part of it. So the hope there is to keep the human kind of active in that phrasing, both in terms of the responsibility and the ethics that I hope my work certainly hopes to kind of shift, and also just to, you know, decentering our place, whether that's the food chain or the way we prioritize how we structure everything, is a key component of the work.
Thank you. I'm reminded of another revolution, one in astronomy, where we quit being Earth-centered and we started to understand that actually there was a different center. Thank you for helping us with that reframing. I certainly have more questions, but I would like to offer time for the audience. Do we have any questions? Shoot your hand up and we will get a microphone to you so that we can help our Zoom folks as well. All right, so I saw a hand go up here and then right next door. Do we have our microphone runner? Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th row up, wearing maroon jacket. Thank you.
Hi, okay, hi. So this is just wonderful to hear where you're exploring and where you're entering and changing the lens of what people have about us and nature and stuff. So just wanted to sort of see how are you feeling with some of the newer movements like forest bathing and the whole awareness of mushrooms and the whole fungi, mycelia, and, you know, there was some other, you know, and then of course the more openness that people are getting about indigenous concepts and visions and lens. So just wanting to know how much of that you're sort of embracing or feeling about.
I think anything that gets us to be in more intimate and sensate contact with the biophysical world is a good thing. Those don't tend to be where I pull inspiration, but I welcome, again, any attempts to get us closer, and, you know, I wish the meditation was happening today, because I think there's a lot of ways in what the forest bathing does, as well as the mycelial kind of memory that you're thinking of is embedded in the guided meditation. So it would have been nice to kind of visualize that. Yeah, I welcome anything, even slowing down and just being in nature, sitting at a spot. I think one of the things that COVID pushed people to do more was to be outdoors, and because things weren't moving at the pace they typically move at, people allowed themselves to slow down and really observe their surroundings. And you could see that even on social media. People were posting, a bird on a tree branch or something coming out of the earth. And I think just once we step outside of the constraints that Western time is imposed on us, we open ourselves up to these different temporalities and these different beings. And any attempts at doing that, I welcome. But my sources of inspiration come from my personal upbringing. I lived half the time growing up in the city and half the time in the forests of Dilijan, which is a mountainous region in Armenia. And this was very intentionally done by my grandfather, who wanted us to explore to know both ways of life. And through my great-grandmother as well, the indigenous practices that were connected to the biophysical world were hugely influential in my upbringing. And so those tend to be where I pull from, and then from science as well as kind of philosophical thought as well.
Thank you.
I will just quickly ask everybody if you remember early in COVID when we were in really full shutdown, the reports coming out of animals refinding their voices. So birds were rediscovering songs that they hadn't sung for a while because we were quiet. So I think it's an interesting, it builds on more than human world. It builds on this idea of decentering ourselves so that we can reconnect. And sustainability, I will observe, is about humans continuing to persist as a species. The planet will go on whether we're on it or not. So it's really an inherent question of, can we re-find our lost way back to cooperating with nature and reconnecting.
That just reminded me, the nature will find its way, just reminded me of one of the prototypes for the breathing piece. At some point got contaminated by a different fungal system, not the shiitake, an unwanted, unsolicited. And at one point, I started to, first I was distraught, and then at some point I said, well, maybe I'm not meant to be part of that system. And so I just let it do its thing. So yes, who knows if the future involves us or not, but.
Thank you, and now we have your question.
Along the lines of what you were doing with the violins, the stringed instruments, and looking at the waveforms, and I'm curious if you've explored human-created sounds, like the vocal sounds, or breathing, or even heartbeat, or brain waves, in this context of your exploration that is really more organic even than a violin string. And also with animal sounds and plant sounds related to that.
Again, I'm going to reference the meditation because that experience, there's two components. There's a guided meditation that you have to wear headphones, and that's just this vocal kind of narration of a piece I wrote. But in the environment, in the context next to the tree, there's speakers that are amplifying the internal sounds of the tree. And so you get to hear all the nutrients and water moving up and down the xylem of the tree in its interior, captured with bioacoustic microphones.
And can you expand on how that might work with humans and relating, let's say, a musical jam, then between the plants and the humans in that way, through sound?
Ask again?
The way that you are transforming those biological or the organic sounds in the trees to have them relate,
Yes.
interact with human sounds.
Yes. So the guided meditation asks you to pay attention to not only the sounds and to connect it to your sounds. It starts to describe how our internal vascular system is quite similar. So it goes through the physiology of the tree and how it's similar to our physiology. It goes through spirituality. It goes through the cultural history of that specific tree that you would have been meditating with. So that through different modalities, it tries to weave the two systems.
And
I'm a cultural anthropologist, and I'm also very interested in nature. And I live up in the mountains here, and I wanted to say that when you notice snow, plants, snow over plants, over roses, and everything, you see how the energy of the plant literally melts the snow. And you know, for us humans, we have a bioenergy, chi, or whatever you call it, but you can feel heat between your hands, and anywhere you can transmit the energy and heat. So I'm wondering whether in all your exploration of nature, ecosystems, whatever, have you ever attempted to measure heat and bioenergy, vibrational energy from living plants? So that's one. I don't know how you would demonstrate it or how you create it in the system. But speaking of non-human, human ecology, and I just want to share that I've been to Armenia several times, and there's a street, an old street on Yerevan, where they were sculpturing these things they do for the tombstones, right?
Hachkars.
Yeah, Shinurakalutchin. But anyway, the point I noticed on that street was there was a interesting dog that, you know how dog don't belongs to anybody, they just, everybody feed them. And but this dog was intentionally doing a very well appreciated job. So there's always cars going through this street, and whenever cars go really too fast, this dog will literally run next to the car, bark at the people driving the car, and until they slow down. And everybody on the street knows this. So I was observing this dog who's basically exercising a lot of agency, using a lot of energy, barking, and just physical energy, and basically, you know, interacting with a human for daily events. And apparently he doesn't get tired of doing it.
There's a lot of cute stray dogs and cats in Yerevan. Mm-hmm. The question of the heat and energy of species, I think I can maybe tie it back to the question that Camille posed initially, which is the connected to the human-centric worldview. This, to me, translates also into the human temporality system that we tend to impose on things, which, you know, if we extend that, and again, going back to slowness, if we extend that and we observe something for a longer duration than we're used to observing, which doesn't feel comfortable, right? If you're looking at something for longer than, what's our attention span these days, 9 seconds? When you extend that, when you allow for different temporalities to enter, I think you see a lot more. You see the plant melting the snow. You start to recognize these kinds of aliveness in these species in a different way. And you know, part of the reason why we think rocks aren't alive is because that temporality is way too slow for us to even comprehend. And a lot of my work is recognizes that a lot of the inaction with regards to the climate crisis, for me personally, is about the questions or the issues being either too large or too small for us to really tangibly feel on our body. And that's part of the reason why I work at the body scale, is I try to bring these systems to be tangibly felt at the scale of the body, but at the same time also try to explode the human temporality system, the human-centric systems, to foreground the other species and the vitality of other species.
We have another question here.
Thank you. I have a background in linguistics and build data models, language-based models with data analysts focused on AI. Specifically, I do this for real estate investment trusts that are trying to make more sustainable builds. A lot of the time I focus on keeping AI more organic and holistic and never losing sight on how we're showing up and building syntax, not just in coding, but also as individuals with different languages and backgrounds. I focus a lot on Maya dialect, and I wanted to ask you if there's any new terminology that you deem we should maybe come up with or push forward so that we can kind of shift perspective, because a lot of the times I feel we're more proponent of pushing through terminology that is new and related to technology rather than nature and the cosmos. So do you have any terminology that you think we should maybe advocate for?
That's fascinating what you do. I don't know about technology, but I think the language is a huge, the way we choose words, how we describe things, is hugely influential in the worlds that we then construct. And the way we image the world as well. There's, I referenced the Robin Wall Kimmerer's text earlier, where she is quite disturbed by the fact that we call other species by the pronoun it. And she thinks that this is a reason why we objectify, we see them as objects, because we call a tree an it. And she goes through her indigenous language and where the pronoun doesn't, it's not it, it's she or he. So and when you call something by a name, and we were having this conversation earlier as well, you start to understand it as a being, as a sentient being, just like you. So language is hugely important, but as are the images we create. A lot of Casey's my student, but a lot of what I try to do in especially my media courses is to have students really draw natural systems and organisms, the way in which they behave, the kind of, so I'll give the example of a river system, for instance, which is usually drawn as this squiggly blue line. But a river changes courses, it swells, it recedes, it takes over a geography that's vaster than that line. And part of the reason why we built homes in the floodplain is that we've essentially forced our environment into the image of the misrepresentation in terms of how we've looked at river systems, for instance, in a map. So a lot of my work in teaching is to have the students depict things truly as they are, so that we could understand them as living entities, and hopefully that gets us to respond and to design and to structure this world differently.
I'll add, I'm also very intrigued by your work. It's a fascinating use of AI. Right now, we are thinking of AI as such a bounded concept. It really is an extremely limited concept of what intelligence is, because it's completely ignoring all of these other intelligences, including those of plants, animals, water, rocks, everything. I mean, there are all these ways of existing and having embodied knowledge that are not captured in AI. And so your question about what syntax should we be including is really intriguing. And also, I think it's even a little bit one level up from syntax in that question of what is artificial and what is intelligence, and how are they going together. And if we are meaning to create an entirely additional type of sentience, then we have to feed it with other kinds of nourishment besides just these really technical ways of thinking. So I'm super intrigued by your effort in the installation that you spoke about at underwritten by the Ford Foundation of interrogating what is artificial intelligence and what does it include and not include. Because I think that's how we're going to really advance any kind of notion of AI that is not utterly dystopian and or not particularly intelligent, just simply really speedy Google searches. So I think we're at the very cusp of a massive revolution in a human experience of this world and what it is going to look like. Okay, I think we have time for one last question, and then I'm betting that our catering is outside that is very creative and we'll all want to enjoy it.
Hi, so I'm a dancer, and so I thought it was really interesting that you had a choreographer collaborate with you on one of your research projects, and because your work is so embodied, I was just curious if you had, or if you've explored other ways of incorporating dance into your work or into, just your research, because, sustainability is something that I studied in college, and I've always wanted to marry the two. I'm just curious if you've had additional explorations.
Yeah. My undergraduate studies was in sculpture and extended media, part of which included performance art, but very loosely. I did it myself in college. But the last piece, the future kin piece in the landscape that meant to be in the land art piece, that's going to have, hopefully, if the funding source miraculously appears, that is to have performers rolling the clay vessel that you saw around the mound. It's going to be a durational over many weeks as the organic matter decomposes in the vessel. But there will be bodies, and I don't yet know who I'm going to be, because it's, at this point a hypothetical project. But get in touch. I love collaborating with, other disciplines, and I know that piece is going to have bodies performing in the landscape. It's something that I love entering worlds with other disciplines. I think the framing of people's training is so fascinating in terms of the worlds that the lens through which they see the world. And in all of my projects, I try to collaborate with as many people from the sciences and even adjacent arts as possible. I think it's such a beautiful it's a beautiful act, and it also echoes the collaborative systems that I'm hoping to put in place with regards to the biophysical world, but I'm also demonstrating how we as humans can also collaborate in bringing those worlds to life as well.
I think that is a beautiful end. Collaborate to be resilient. Thank you so much for joining us, and please enjoy our reception.